We have had nothing but obstruction and stonewalling and slow walking and lying and redactions and claims of national security that are non-existent, that are proven to be utter lies. And now there is going to be contempt of Congress charges brought against the DOJ, people like Rod Rosenstein and others, which should happen, which should have happened already. And on top of that, then we're going to have impeachment articles drawn up about him because they're not obeying the law. And I can tell all of you that if you dare to do what Rod Rosenstein is doing and you are subpoenaed by Congress to hand over documents, just like Robert Mueller subpoenas people to hand over their phones. And if you did what Hillary Clinton did, and I wouldn't advise it, would turn out badly for you. It's bad advice. And you literally you delete the emails, you acid wash your hard drive, and you bust up your devices. It's not going to work out well. And that's the fact here. And why the DOJ has been doing this, well, it only makes people like me that much more suspicious about what it is that they are hiding. Anyway, joining us to discuss this showdown, Sarah Carter, Fox News investigative reporter, contributor, David Schoen. He's a civil liberties attorney, criminal rights attorney. Thank you both for being with us. Sarah, this has been your story. My sources say it could be as early as today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was some hesitancy, during the week. There's been a lot going on immigration. I've been talking to sources on the Hill. There was some talk of waiting to do those papers until next week, but I don't think they're going to be waiting. There is enormous frustration, Sean, on the Hill right now. Lawmakers are livid. I think we could hear it in Representative Trey Gowdy's voice. I mean, this is a man that came out publicly and everybody was scratching their heads and said, well, I think the FBI did the right thing. They might have had the right reasons for, having these informants. And because he was taking the word of the DOJ that they did everything the right way, and then something changed. And there have been people that I've been talking to that say he has felt lied to over and over again. He came out and said over the weekend, I want those documents today, meaning he wanted them on Sunday. Rod Rosenstein refused, did not comply, did not even answer. And then during the week, they asked for them again. They have refused to turn them over, and as I know right now, those documents are still not with the committees and with the members, and the members are going to move forward with contempt of Congress and probably processing impeachment papers.
We heard from Jim Jordan yesterday saying it's a three-step process, but impeachment articles will be drawn up. I hear they already are, actually. Is that true?
That is true. The impeachment article's already drawn up. All they have to do is just submit it. Remember, there's enormous frustration, too, is getting enough members on board to make this stick. And Rod Rosenstein might be looking at playing a long game here. He may say, you know what, they don't have enough teeth. I don't care what they say. I'm not turning over the documents. Let's see where this impeachment process goes. So it really is up to the members of Congress. It's up to people who really want to know what happened here to push their members of Congress to follow through with this. So that's very, very important here. I know there are a number of members of Congress that are ready to move forward with especially contempt of Congress, but impeachment is something altogether different, and they're going to need enough members to ensure that that happens.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me go to David Schoen and all of this. We'll have Rudy Giuliani at the bottom of the hour. The amazing thing as you look over all of this, and it should shock the American conscience in so many different ways, but one thing that is, as we go through this and we learn about all this, what have we found? That they never even considered Hillary Clinton the target in an investigation where obvious crimes were committed. And now that we know that they rigged this so-called investigation and it was never serious at any point and they had fixed it from the beginning, does this raise the specter, David Schoen, that she should be now reinvestigated, have a real investigation, or are we looking at statute of limitations that might be applicable?
No, I think there's no question that she should be reinvestigated and prosecuted based on the evidence that we've seen so far. But I think the more pressing issue right now is recognizing once and for all what's going on with this Mueller investigation, so-called investigation, the whole cloud over it. Look, shame on the Department of Justice for forcing this to contempt and impeachment proceedings after what came out in that IG report. My God, it shouldn't be forced. This kind of constitutional crisis It should be change the people involved so they comply with their Article 2 obligations, coordinate with Congress. Get rid of these people who are obstructionists, and let's get all.
But that's Rod Rosenstein. So Congress should move because he's obstructing and not obeying the law to impeach him. And it actually is worse than that, because we now know Rod Rosenstein was screaming and yelling, apparently has a vicious and a vile temper. And I've now confirmed this with multiple sources, people that have seen it in action, and threatening members of Congress. Well, okay, I'm going to subpoena your emails and I'm going to go after you. What? Because they're doing their constitutional duty and they're involved in oversight. That's why you're going to now go after them. And that sounds to me like a threat. That sounds like he's willing to use the power of his office as a weapon to intimidate people from doing their job.
And threatening the investigators, Sean, threatening the people that are working day and night to get to the truth of the matter, to expose what really happened here. You would think that the DOJ would be on the same side of wanting to discover the truth. You would think that the Department of Justice, under Rod Rosenstein, under Attorney General Jeff Sessions, the FBI, with new FBI Director Christopher Wray, would want to expose the truth, would want to know where this culture of corruption emanated from and root it out of their bureaucracy so that they can start fresh and new. But instead, what they're doing is fighting to cover it up, fighting to keep it away from the American people, fighting to not allow Congress to know the truth. And by the way, Congress being elected officials, these are not elected officials. These are the people we put into office to conduct oversight. And I think what is so enormously frustrating is, what is the result of covering all this up? That it continues for the next 20 or 30 years, that we continue to have people within these departments that are corrupt and who are doing whatever they want? Because one of the things that came out of the hearings that I am just stuck on is that, that we weren't going to expose all of this in the future, that all of this stuff would, no, we want this to be exposed. We want to know what's going on. These are our tax dollars at work. I mean, Mueller has spent over $17 million on this special counsel. And now we know that all the people who made this happen were people that were vehemently anti-Trump, and that were not just anti-Trump. That's okay if they want to believe that at home. But they were taking it to the office, and they were working to ensure that a duly elected president.
They were weaponizing their positions to impact a presidential election. Now, it couldn't be any more clear. As I went through the timeline, I won't repeat everything that I've said yesterday and on the air last night, but the timeline, the text messages are clear. Oh, this is important. You better go easy on Hillary. She's going to be the next president. He's never going to be president. No, we'll stop him, and we have an insurance policy if, God forbid, he does win, after all, this loathsome human being that he is. So they use their power. They use their position to go after, to literally impact an election and undermine the American people and the electoral process. I would think there are crimes involved for everybody here.
Exactly right. And look, Sarah Carter is right on again, and thank God, she keeps covering the story, and you keep covering the story. But let's just see.
I think Sarah deserves a Pulitzer myself, but what do I know?
Absolutely. Listen, plenty. There are a million trees to see here, but let's see the forest first. What even the IG, despite his conclusion, recognized in express terms before the Senate is that there is now a huge cloud, in his words, over the FBI, over the Clinton email investigation, and over the Russia investigation. Are we to have spent all of this time and money on the IG report and every other investigative tool to not learn anything? Because what we know 100% for sure is that this team that Mueller handpicked out of a whole universe of capable attorneys has an agenda that's the same agenda that Strzok and Page and agent this one and anonymous agent that one and Mr. McCabe had, and that was stop Trump. So this is just another tool now. We must learn from our mistakes.
Forget about Russian interference. Just put it aside. The amount of interference by Strzok and all the Trump-hating, Hillary-loving people in this election. In truth, if they did their job, she would have had to have been replaced as the Democratic nominee. They didn't do their job. This impacts every single level of our electoral process in this country. And if that is allowed to stand, it's going to happen again. And it's far worse than anything I think the Russians ever conceived of doing, and their goal was obviously to sow chaos, as evidenced by the fact that they were supporting and not supporting both candidates at different times. 800-941-SEAN is our toll-free telephone number. Sarah Carter, David Schoen are with us. We'll continue on the other side. All right, as we continue, Sean Hannity Show, Rudy Giuliani at the bottom of the hour. We continue with Sarah Carter, Fox News investigative reporter, David Schoen, civil liberties, criminal rights attorney. I now see the Daily Caller, Christopher Steele, visiting the State Department shortly before the 2016 election. And apparently briefing them on his work. Now that brings back into this whole mix, who knew what, when, and where?
And I think we know now. I mean, if Christopher Steele was visiting in October 2016 and briefing State Department officials about the anti-Trump dossier, and we have to remember at the same time there were very close friends of Hillary Clinton connected as well to the dossier in a separate dossier. We know Sidney Blumenthal was connected to it. We know Cody Shear, who worked with the Clintons and who was a former journalist and who was very, very close to Bill Clinton, was compiling his own dossier, some of which was very similar, by the way, to Steele's dossier. It was like one was playing off the other. And we also know and believe that John Kerry was very well connected. And this is somebody that, former State Department official, which the House Intelligence Committee is looking into. Who knew about this? How were they all involved in this? These are the questions that they want to know. And it was Victoria Nuland who, in a television interview, revealed it for the first time, where she said they were scrambling to gather as much information as possible on President Trump and their concerns over Russia early on. So this is going to be very significant. It's going to play a big part in the investigation, both on the Senate side and also on the House side of the investigation.
Well, again, it brings in, David Schoen, the idea. Remember when the revelation was made that the FBI had interviewed Downer in England, and they had to, navigate that with the State Department. That means Kerry knew, and that likely means Obama knew. And I want to know who knew what, when, and where. And that's what we haven't had answered yet.
And there was no bigger cesspool than that State Department. Let's face it. Let's call it what it is. But listen, it just goes to show you have to keep hitting. More pieces that fall into place, the more you see the integrity of the entire process falling apart. Any prosecutorial decision or any conclusion at the end of this cannot have the confidence of the American people when we know these same people who we now know are corrupt and biased are the people behind the FISA applications, are the people behind putting us.
Well, now we know everything we've reported is true. Now it's all been proven. Yeah. Now people have to be held accountable. That's the next step. And whether or not we're going to have equal justice under the law, equal application of our laws. All right, I got to roll. Thank you both. We'll see you on television tonight.